Hi, I'm Patti. I'm a jewelry designer here at Fire Mountain Gems and Beads. And today I'm going to be taking you through this 6th project in our Secrets of Wireworking series. We're going to be making these hammered spiral earrings. We're carrying forth the technique of embellishing with beads. And you're going to be learning the new technique of making an open spiral and hammering the wire flat. So let's look at some of the elements in this piece. We've got crystal pearls, crystal bicones in different sizes, and some sterling ear wires, as well as 2 sizes of sterling wire. So I'm going to first use my flush cutters, and I'm going to snip just a bit off of the end to make sure I have a nice flush cut on the end of my wire. Then I'm going to take my round nose pliers using the very bottom of the barrel, and I'm going to grab the tip of that wire and make a revolution almost all the way around, like that. Then when creating a spiral, I always like to cut off the first couple of millimeters there. So again, we have our flush cut, and continue around. And I don't want that to actually hit the inside wire here. I want to leave it open. Now I'm going to put my round nose pliers back in, and I'm going to use the natural curve of the wire, and I'm just going to gently push it around like this. And then adjust my round nose pliers as I need. So I'm going slow and just creating the size of spiral that I want. Now I can kind of put one barrel of the round nose pliers inside that loop and then outside here to tighten it up a little bit. So I don't want to make it too big. And then I'm being very gentle with the pliers as to not mar the wire. You don't need to get too much of a hard grip on that. And I'm just going around until I have the size of spiral that I want. So I'm just going to check it against this piece and see if that's about the size that I want it to be. And it is. You can see that goes right over that spiral. So now I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to kind of straighten this out just a bit. All right, so I've got my spiral and I've got a fairly straight section. And then up about maybe 2.5 inches from the spiral to 2.5 inches, I think it's closer to 2. I'm going to just gently bend it with my thumb. And I'm really holding the wire with my thumb and forefingers. And I'm letting the wire cross over itself like this. Now I'm going to make my second spiral, and to do that I'm going to pull the wires apart a bit and put them on a different plane. So one of the keys to making 2 overlapping spirals is to go ahead and for now let the wires be on kind of a different plane instead of flat together. That way I'm not involving this one in this wire. I'm going to pull off a little bit. So I'm going to measure about how far down I want my next spiral to be. So if we look at the earring that we already have, it's about, I'd say 3/4 of an inch down below the first spiral. So at about that length, I'm going to start curving the wire back up. I'm going to pull a little more off here so it's not in the way. And then I'm just gently curving the wire around, just with my thumb and forefinger clamping down here and my thumb and, or one finger and thumb up here, kind of pushing around. And you're just forming a new circle real gently. I'm going to grab my round nose pliers and put the base of that barrel in the inside, and I'm going to work around those to finish it off. So it's all about small adjustments and small movements. And I've made the bottom spiral, now I can kind of put them back on plane and see how they are together. I feel like the bottom spiral is just a bit large. And this happens whenever you're making that second spiral. So I'm going to cut off just a little more. There. Put my round nose in there and adjust it in and make it the size I want it. And I'm just kind of gently clamping it, moving it until I get what I want. And I want them to overlap just a bit. So I've got two different planes here you can see. One is going off this direction, one is straight. I'm just going to kind of clamp that juncture and pull the other one underneath and make them overlap just how I want them. I think I'm going to make this bottom spiral just a little bit smaller, even yet. Now we're going to be applying a hammered finish to this, and one thing to remember is that when you hammer the wire, it's going to expand a little bit. Your spirals will expand, so it will even be a little bit larger than what you have here. You see I'm grabbing my chain nose pliers so I can get a little bit of a grip there so I can bring it in. I'll probably cut off just a smidge more of that spiral. And it's okay to take your time in working this until you get it how you want it. Okay. So there is the wire portion, or the main wire portion of my earring. Now the next section, or the next step in this is going to be hammering this. So the type of hammering that we're going to be doing on this piece is called planishing, and that just basically means flattening the wire. So if you see the piece this way, I'm going to separate those spirals and we're going to put them back together later. It's okay. You don't want to hammer them together because they overlap and you would mess up the wire that way. We don't want to do that. So to start hammering, I've got a steel block. That's a 4-inch steel block. Underneath it, we've got a rubber base, and that helps deaden some of the vibration to the table. And then I've got this hammer. This is a special kind of hammer. It's a chasing hammer. It has a ball finish on one end, the ball end here, and then it has a slightly domed surface on this end. The domed surface is important because as you hammer, the edges of the hammer don't touch the piece, and it keeps you from putting marks into the metal. So I really like this particular kind of chasing hammer when I'm hammering planishing like this. So the first thing we're going to do is hammer one of the spirals. So I'm going to put one of the spirals on the steel block. I think I'll even push this up a little further so it's really out of the way. And we're going to hammer right up to where the juncture is for the wire. So right up to about there. And we're just going to flatten this. So I'm going to go ahead and hold it right about there. And then I'm going to take the domed surface of my hammer and I'm just going to start flattening. Now, it's important to know that when you're hammering a spiral, if you hammer on the outside, it's going to contract. If you hammer on the inside, it's going to expand. So you want to try and hammer your spiral pretty evenly between the inside and the outside to make sure that it contracts and expands evenly and the spiral keeps its shape. And I want to keep this out of the way. Sometimes you'll accidentally touch that. That's okay. Okay, then I'm going to put the other spiral on the block this direction. And I'm going to hold it about at that juncture where I want to stop hammering. And I'm going to go ahead and again hammer nice and evenly. Now that both of my spirals and up to the juncture are nice and hammered, I'm going to put it back on plane. And you might need to use your nylon jaw pliers just to make some little adjustments in case it got a little wonky there. That happens when you're hammering. Just to keep it nice and smooth and fluid. Okay, so just little hand adjustments until it's all back on plane. The last thing we'll do is hammer this little top part. And we want to start kind of at the tip top, and go up one side and then up the other side. And you want to make sure and stay away from that juncture. Keep the juncture here where the wires cross off of the block. That way you don't inadvertently hammer that. And then as you hammer, it will go off plane a little bit. That's okay. Grab your nylon jaw pliers and adjust it as you need to get it back on plane so all the pieces are flat against each other and it's all smooth. The next step in these earrings is to wire on the crystal and pearl embellishments. So let's go ahead and cut a piece of wire to use to wire on the embellishments. So we're going to pull off a piece that it's about 12 inches. Right about there. You don't want to work off the roll with the thinner wire in general because it's very easy to kink that up and you don't want to ruin your roll. You want to keep that nice and round. Okay. So we're going to wire on this outside set of beads. So you can see that this is the mirror image of this earring. So we're going to start right about at the bottom of the inside spiral here, the inside loop. So right about here. I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and 2 or 3 inches down, I'm just going to make a little bend in the wire like that. And then I'm going to hook the wire around the piece. And I'm going to be able to move the location of it here in a second. So I'm just going to show you anywhere on there. It doesn't matter where it is right now. That I'm pulling up the small tail and leaving the long tail out there. So we're going around the piece pretty tightly. And just kind of forming the first wrap that way. And I'm just kind of straightening my wire as I go, pulling that tail so they're in opposite directions. Once I have them in opposite directions like that, I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and just kind of clamp those two together so they're nice and tight. And then I'm really going to keep this tail, I'm going to position it where I want it, which is over here. One second. I'm wanting it right about there, and I'm going to clamp this short tail right against those spirals with my thumb and forefinger and keep it there. And then this longer tail I'm going to bring through and bring around, and I'm going to go do a couple of really nice tight wraps. And if they're not as tight as you want them, just grab your chain nose pliers and squeeze them together. Now, before I thread any beads onto this, I'm going to make a little bend in the wire. So we're starting off with this really itty bitty 2 millimeter bead. So about 1 millimeter up from the piece, I'm going to make a 90-degree bend. Just like that. Then we'll get one of those 2 millimeter beads. Thread that onto the wire. It's really easier to put them on the mat and then thread them that way than try and pick them up and thread them because they're so small. Let that fall right against the bend that I just made. just like that. And I'm going to kind of clamp that there with my finger, go around and back through the piece and up, nice and taut. And now I've wrapped the first bead on there, and having made that 90-degree bend, the bead stays nice and on top of the wire that we're wiring it onto. If we hadn't made that bend and we put the bead on there, when we wrapped it around, we would see the hole in the bead. But if we did the little bend, we just see the nice smooth top of the bead. So the next bead that I'm putting on is one of these really little bicones. I think it's a 3 millimeter there. So about 1.5 millimeters, so half of the width of that bead up from the piece, I'm going to make another 90-degree bend. You always want to make your bend about half the width of the bead that you're wiring on. So we're going to put that 3 millimeter bicone on. Let it fall right against the bend. Clamp that down and then wrap your wire up and through. One little trick to keeping your wire nice and making it easier to go up and through, you can go this way, which I did first, but once you have some on there, you can take this little bit of wire that's near the base and put that through and then pull it. Whoop. Try not to hit your beads. And then bring it right on up, straighten it a bit, and then get ready for your next bead, which is going to be one of these 4 millimeter bicones. So 2 millimeters up from the piece, I'm going to make that 90-degree bend. Then thread on my bicone. And let that fall right against the bend. Clamp that, push it down, push the wire through, pull it up straight, do a little adjustment if you need to. Okay, so we've got the first 3 beads wired on. The next one is one of these little 4 millimeter crystal pearls. Now that I've got all of the embellishments wired on, I'm going to turn the piece around. And right up against the base, I'm going to snip off each of the tails. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and just tuck in those tails and make sure there is nothing pokey on the piece. Now when you're finishing wired embellishments like this, it's a very good idea once you've done that to just run your finger over it in different directions and make sure you don't feel anything. If you do, and you've got it tucked in as much as you can take a sanding pad and just sand the bit of the tail that's poking out and make sure it's not going to catch. So there we have one set of the beads wrapped on. We've got a little pearl, 2 bicones, another pearl, a bicone, a bicone, a bicone, and 1 more pearl. Then we're going to mirror this on the other side here, the same exact thing, and then do a shorter set up here on this curve. And that will be a bicone, a bicone, a bicone, and a little pearl right here. Now, you can use your creativity and change that up any way you want to and wrap on whatever embellishment strikes your fancy. So here I have an earring with all 3 sections of embellishments wired on. The last thing we need to do is add the ear wire. Grab the ear wire, and you want to open that up with your chain nose or flat nose pliers sideways, just gently. You always want to open it sideways. Orient the embellishments to the front, and then close it up the same way, sideways. And when you close it, rock it back and forth a little bit to make sure the tip touches the ear wire and you have a nice tight connection. And there you have your beautiful hammered wire earring. In this project, our 6th in the Secrets of Wireworking series, you've learned to create an open spiral and how to properly planish your wire. In the next project, we're going to be making these gorgeous chandelier earrings. In this project, you're going to learn to add a hammered finish to your planished wire and how to make chandelier components, as well as your own ear wires. Well, thank you for being with us here today. I hope that you've enjoyed this series so far, and I look forward to seeing you in the next project.